on my attention. My countrymen, they love their fiction. Words upon now, it's made with good intentions.
Welcome to 1 or 200, the independent politics and media podcast, where today we are getting into more interesting topics. Many years ago, we had a live stream where we talked more about pop culture, the creative arts, the creative industries, and we had a whole range of guests on every week and every fortnight with my mate Tim. Mitch, my co-host here today, came on a few of those as well. How are you doing, Mitch?
Yeah, doing all right. Just tired, working hard.
Fantastic.
That's about it, yeah.
And we're joined by two fantastic guests today as well, Martyn Pepperell and Anthony Metcalf. Martyn, do you want to give a quick introduction to our audience?
Okay, like you said, Martyn Pepperell. I'm a freelance music arts and culture journalist, broadcaster, DJ, photographer. Lately, I seem to be a maze maker based in Wellington. Been kicking around music and media in New Zealand for about 20 years. About half of that has involved mostly working for outlets based in the UK and US, places like Mixmag, DJ Mag, Bandcamp Daily, Dazed and Confused, broadcasting with internet radio stations like NTS, Dublab, The Lot Radio, some domestic work with Radio New Zealand, The Spin-Off, various blogs over the years. And lately, a lot of work with small independent record labels, helping them put together reissues of underloved cult classic albums from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Labels like Fredericksburg Records in New York, Gazebo in Melbourne, Isle of Jura in Adelaide, and Sublime Records in Japan. So always doing a bit of everything.
Fantastic. And Anthony?
Hello, my name's Anthony. It's a silent H. There's no reason for you to know that. I'm just telling people, so it always comes up eventually. I am in the live music world, run a promotions and booking agency called 100% Good. I've done pretty much all the shitty and not so shitty jobs in the music industry, publicist, working at a venue, running shows, not getting paid for shows, getting paid for shows, working directly with artists and other industry people. And yeah, I guess not quite as well versed as Martyn on the media side, but we definitely talk a lot about issues that affect all kind of levels. And I guess that's what we're talking about today, broadly.
Yeah. I mean, on a broad level, both of us have pretty much done all of it from the ground up. And like Anthony, I've had a couple of stints in event promotion as well in the early 2000s and in the 2010s, running the shows, looking after the artists, putting the production together, going on tour with people, doing merch, all sorts of stuff. And, Anthony's got quite a history before he was doing the promotion side of things as well. He actually understands the artist's perspective quite well also.
I also used to do a podcast with Branko when we were teenagers.
The classic. We're going to get everyone back.
You should look it up, man. It's wild.
Oh, no, I know about it.
It's wild.
Mitch, do you just want to give your credentials as well?
Yeah, so I've been involved in New Zealand music since 2008, I guess, like shortly after I moved here from Australia. Been in small bands, played to no one to 1,000 people, co-ran a touring company and worked with bands and done all that sort of stuff as well. None on the media side really, apart from making shitty little blurbs for events, but nothing big, and merch running and stuff like that as well.
Fantastic.
Nice.
Now, I guess I'll do mine. So we know that everyone here has some level of expertise. I've also done a little bit of event management years and years and years ago now, well out of that game, and working with music festivals and event venues. So yeah, really excited to have everyone here to discuss a topic which often and more regularly recently is coming up around our cities dying. A drop in hospitality venues, a drop in live music, theatre, cinema, everywhere kind of struggling. Ticket prices continuing to climb regardless, with the interaction with international ticketing organizations. Bringing events here, getting harder in some respects, it feels like as well. And just this general malaise where people feel like there's not much of a nightlife. Everything's really hard right now, we're in a cost of living crisis, so people have less money to spend. But there's also nowhere or less places that people feel like they can go to cut loose, to let off some steam, to go and see some good music, be with their people, and enjoy the community that all this stuff is meant to give us. And yeah, I guess we just want to talk broadly about that, how we got here, and what some of the solutions might be. I guess maybe you're working in booking and the like at the moment, Anthony. Do you want to give us a quick rundown on your experiences recently?
Yeah, I guess shows have always been challenging to sell. It just kind of like depends what the show is. Like historically, there was, when you don't know anything and you're just trying to sell tickets to something, you walk around the street with a bucket full of PVA glue and just stick your posters up and post on MySpace and stuff. And it's like people might be at the show and you don't really, it's very hard to connect one with the other. I used to book a club night downtown, Cassette 9. It's like a band night, 3 bands a week, every week. And like there was literally no rhyme or reason sometimes why it was full or why it was absolutely empty. Like you would do the same thing every week, or at least feel like you're doing the same thing, and have completely variable returns that you couldn't define logically, from like a bar take perspective or what have you. So yeah, I don't know. I was at a conference last week in Brisbane about music industry stuff, and there's a guy doing a book tour, Shane Shapiro, about how music shapes cities and how it's not factored into government policy. And he had this really good line about how the ubiquity of music fucks it up in people's brains, because they think about it like water. Like when you turn a water tap on, you don't actually think about all the steps for the water to get to your glass. But and music's the same now. We pay a tech company $14.99 a month to listen to any song released within reason. And it's like we're kind of a step away from the creation and community side. We just kind of look at our phones, and it's like there's a bit of a disparity there that is maybe now reflecting in the society pretty negatively. Does that make sense? But yeah, you saw Shane's talk, Martyn. He had some good points.
Yeah, it's a good book. The book is called This Must Be the Place, How Music Can Make Your City Better. It's published by Repeater Books. You can get a copy for sort of $35, $36. Some great reading in there. I just want to say a couple of context things. I think broadly I'm going to speak in really broad stereotype terms. I think there's 2 ways you can have a good music, arts and culture scene or community in a city or country. The first one is you work towards a society where everybody has stable, affordable housing, the ability to pay their bills, the ability to save and have discretionary spending income and free time. Broadly speaking, I think most creatives in general need what pretty much everybody needs. They need stability, they need space, they need resources. So you can work towards that sort of society. That's one way you can do it. That's the way I'd like us to do it. Now, there's another way you can do it as well. It's been done in the past. I don't necessarily know if I'd like us to do it, but I know it can be quite exciting. And that way is you let everything run down until you end up with these Mad Max style cities where people are living in warehouses or apartments where they're squatting, they don't pay rent, and they're stealing power. And maybe since it's 2024, there might be a few hipster food trucks going around. So that's another way you can do it. You can have a great music scene through total social collapse, or you can have a great music and culture and art scene through, you take care of everybody, take care of the economic settings, take care of housing, take care of opportunities, and people will have the mental space to pursue these passions. People will have the mental and physical space to appreciate what people are creating, and it'll be nice.
Martyn and I have a Twitter friend called Elijah who has this line that's like, Rent is the creative director. And that's kind of one of his, he talks a lot about the stuff in London. And he has this other good slide where people will ask him like about moving to London and pursuing music. Like, how can I get ahead in the hardest city in the world to pay rent with an art form without anyone telling me how to change my creative output and like live a comfortable life, and like just showing the impossibility of pursuing that kind of creative career in London or pretty much anywhere at the moment.
Yeah, I don't think people in the arts need special treatment. I just think everyone needs basic dignity, space, security. If you do all of that stuff, get all of that right, all the art stuff will follow very quickly. And a few other things will follow quickly too. I think people would be way less nasty to each other if they had more stability, had more resources.
But
Yeah, I
there's
think a
also
lot of it
that
comes with. No, you go.
there's also that mental block that a lot of the public have where they see someone doing music or pursuing a creative art, and they think, oh God, you're living the dream. And it's like they are pursuing their art despite that not being true. Like it's the understanding of what it goes into a creative career is so not public and, hidden behind Instagram posts and stuff that kind of separation means that people just think if you're doing it, you must be okay. And for a lot of people, that is becoming less and less true.
Yeah, sometimes I think in the general imagination, there can almost be this binary where artists are fabulously wealthy, and because they're fabulously wealthy, it doesn't matter whether you purchase their music or not, or they're sort of these losers who need to eat shit and die. And in reality, there's a huge swathe of people who attempts to exist in the middle as artistic or creative middle class, and they don't aspire to play sold out stadiums or sell millions of records or have billions of streams. They just want enough to be able to maintain this lifestyle and maybe have a family and have some stability and connect with people through their art form.
And that's getting harder and harder every single day.
Mitch, how have you found it, I guess, out there booking gigs with your band?
Impossible. Basically, I mean, it's no secret that Auckland is extremely starved of venues, especially for like low end bands, like maybe like 200 and under capacity venues. I mean, we got Double Whammy now, which just opened up, and I always get the fucking number wrong. 605, I think. I think that's kind of it. And you get like random like halls and stuff if you're very lucky to rent it out, if the council will be so kind. But my biggest reckon on New Zealand music and music in general is that we undercultivate the all ages scene, so that by the time that people can start living the creative lifestyle and making their own music and all that sort of stuff, there's just no new blood. So there's no interest in continuing live music. So then venues get shut down. And obviously there's all these other factors that go into it, but that's something I've always been passionate about, is the cultivation of all ages music scenes, because without it, we're kind of fucked.
Okay, I just want to say something about the late 90s, which is a real long time ago now. Okay. So when I started going out to concerts, warehouse raves, dance parties in the late 90s as a teenager, drinking age was still... What was the drinking age before it was 18? Was it 20 or 21?
I think it was 20, mate.
Yeah, okay, so I feel like it might have been 21 a bit before then, but I suppose what I'm getting at is there were a lot of people under the age of the drinking age who were interested in music, 18 and 19-year-olds who were passionate about this. And some of them were organizing events or playing in bands or DJing. And part of the way they were able to make it work was, at the time, there was a lot of all ages stuff, because the people who were running some of it were under the drinking age at the time. And in a funny way, like, that was actually quite good, because it meant that this culture really came together for people at a younger age. Now, you dial down the drinking age to 18, which has probably been great in other ways, but it does create a little bit of a conundrum for the all ages scene, because I think when you talk to people about the idea of all ages gigs, yeah, I mean, maybe if you're 19, 20, 21, 22, organizing an all ages show, it's pretty cool. But, you get into your late 20s, get into your 30s, starts to get pretty weird. 35-year-old organizing an event for a whole bunch of 14 and 15-year-olds. So to do that sort of thing, you really need a culture in place where older people are able to empower younger people to essentially run these all ages events like for their peers.
Because the problem with there's been a few cycles of all age scenes in Auckland that have been quite vibrant. As soon as that person turns 18, who was cultivating, getting the PAs and sorting the door people out, booking the shows, as soon as that person turns 18, the culture's completely gone. And you need to wait for someone else to, make friends with the Old Folks Association and book shows there, It's like, it's not self replicating. It's just flashes in the
Yeah.
pan that turn into something. And a lot of the acts that are, successful in those scenes do go on to do other stuff in music. But yeah, it's like without those young people, and you can't, as Martyn says, you can't have 35 plus people making cool shows for underage people because it's just not cool. It's not like anti-establishment. It is establishment.
And even if that's like you could have a framework in place that allowed that to occur, which, the resources are coming from people who are older, right? But you need to be able to hand off control to people making stuff for themselves and their own community.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
to come back to the economic settings, if we had more reasonable economic settings, then it would be far more feasible for 14, 15, 16-year-olds to helm these sort of things. And look, I mean, if you dial things back to Auckland in the mid-90s, that was happening. You had 15-year-olds who were able to book nightclubs and hire lasers and book DJs and put together all-night dance parties and market them. And some of them lost a bit of money, but compared to the sort of money people could potentially lose on a show today, they didn't actually lose that much money.
I was going to say, when I was like 18, 19, we were putting on shows at Ella Melville, and it cost you like $500 and you get 200 people so easily. And now I couldn't imagine how much Ella Melville costs if you could even still rent it out. But last time I checked, which was maybe like 10 years ago, it was like 1,500, and you could not fill it out, not at an all ages. But it could be, I would hate to think how much that venue costs now. So yeah, it's just costs are higher and the interest is lower from the public.
Well, but part of the problem also is, and this isn't necessarily a problem, this is a problem for music, but I don't think it's really a problem for the consumer, is there's so many more forms of entertainment available to people now. You could be invested in video games, like the whole film thing. I mean, look, the number of sort of film societies and little film clubs and things around the country. Then you've got people who are into wellness culture. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but when I was in my early 20s, there wasn't a lot of wellness culture going around. I don't really remember that. And even like food. I mean, I go back, if you look at changes in New Zealand's hospitality industry over the last 20 years, changes in alcohol, the whole concept of the craft beer bar. I remember before the craft beer bar, the wine bars, all of that. There's just so many things, and people understand themselves in such different ways now. I mean, music used to be so central to how people built an identity, and for some people, it's still fundamentally central. But we've crossed an event horizon where we're possibly about to. No, I think we're already encountering young people who've built their identity around a couple of podcasts they listen to through their teens, and being involved in forms of activism, and I think that's really good. But I mean, for music, it's marginal, But ultimately, like, it's great to see how socially and politically activated so much of the younger generation are, and how aggressively people are really out there fighting to try and make a difference in so many different areas of society. That's exciting, and it's really exciting for me when that can come together with music and arts as well. But sometimes it doesn't always do that.
Like there's a history going back for centuries, in the way that music movements and activist movements have gone hand in hand. But we kind of mentioned it before, Anthony, when you're talking about tech companies. But there's this kind of homogenization of the music experience alongside the commercialization of it, alongside big festival and stadium venues. That's where that horizon is. It's between that huge kind of capital output and the kind of smaller community gigs that Mitch was talking about. I was going to say, what's in between? How do you bridge that?
Well, Martyn before was describing how different entertainments exist now, and I think if you look through like a economics lens, like if you were to go out for dinner on a Friday, go to a film, and then go to a gig, how much do you think that experience would cost you? In 2024, like, it could be $100, but it could be $200.
Yeah.
Yeah, 150 to 200, maybe 300.
So like, I feel like the reason we have the rise for these massive stadium shows that cost $400 and they're doing really well is because people are prioritizing they want to be guaranteed a good time, and you know, you might not like Coldplay, but they do a really good show. People that go to the show, you know, they have the wristband that lights up, and it's just like you can post it on Instagram and people know you went and stuff. And I just think it's harder for the smaller, more marginal club shows. Like we've all been to gigs that sucked. Like, let's be honest. I would say almost half the gigs I've been to have sucked.
Yeah.
I go to gigs all the time. A lot of them are shit. And I think people are not willing to take a risk on that when it could still cost you $50 or $100 for that experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then you've got the venues that can't are needing to sell alcohol to make their business work. There's less people drinking because it's expensive. It's just like this rolling ball of hay that you just can't stop.
Well, it's interesting though, because the drinking is more expensive, but it's also, you could also make the argument that in a lot of circles, it's probably less socially acceptable to get that level of drunk, because that level of drunkenness is associated with a whole bunch of other behaviors that people would not like to have involved in their nightlife experiences anymore.
Which
we're
is
in
good.
a different world. In some ways, we're in a more progressive world. In some ways, it probably feels a bit less dangerous to some people. But I'll take that over terrible things happening to people at nighttime.
One of the things I often come back to is the New Zealand density of population. So in a lot of these more expensive cities, you know, it costs more maybe to live there, but smaller venues can pack out a show. They can get a lot of people through. There's more potential for a niche art form or genre to pack a house out and get to that point where I think you described it, Martyn, as, you know, a music middle class, where they're breaking even, they're getting a little bit more, they can make a living out of it. Whereas here, I know in Auckland in particular, you know, you're traveling across the city to get to a venue somewhere. So is everyone else trying to do that. The rental costs, as you said, Mitch, are just progressively higher, like unrealistically high, you could even say, given how few people are trying to do events outside maybe corporates doing a like breakout day for their office. And, you know, with only, you know, Auckland, most populous city, you know, 1.47 million people or something. Can that kind of population support a flourishing entertainment culture at this point without better infrastructure and space design that takes it into account? Because often it feels like that part of it is a losing battle as well.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't account for the costs of things, but Auckland used to support it very like handily. I've got I was never in a band that paid the way, but you know, we used to run a tour management company that did fine. Like we were able to survive off that for 5 or 6 years.
Pretty good.
Yeah, it was shocking, honestly. It's just, so the population isn't the problem. It's the costs, I think. Like Wellington right now, I got a lot of friends who are doing really well on a small level with a company called Start Today. They're doing fantastic work. They got stuff going on every, I don't know, like once a month, and it sells out Thistle Hall almost-ish. So yeah, Wellington's what? 500,000, 600,000 people?
I think Wellington Central's even less.
Even less.
350 maybe. Yeah, it's
Shit.
I think to add to your point, Mitch, it's cost, but it's also accessibility. When you think about a place like Auckland, there are very few places you can get to on public transport, or rather get home from after, say, 10:30, 11 p.m.
Yeah.
And because gig culture is so, I actually wrote an article, it's for Spinoff, about this in 2020. And like since then, everything has gotten a lot worse. But, you know, if you're going to a show at the Hollywood in Avondale, which is an amazing venue, you know, you're getting a cab back from that 100%. And if you live on the North Shore, that's, you know, that's, so like accessibility factors into the cost 100%, I think, because you can get downtown, but whether you can get back, you know.
Yeah, I lived in Titirangi for a couple of years, and I went to a gig at the Hollywood.
Yeah,
it was a $60 Uber each way. Like
that's right. Yeah, you couldn't have
Yeah.
got there. You couldn't have got there either.
nah,
Crazy,
yeah.
man. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, 100%.
And that's still cheaper than discount taxis would have been. But yeah, I think Auckland, like there are other examples of cities that, you know, Auckland is a city of music. which I,
Ha!
have put in quote marks because I've got feelings about that. But there are Austin. Austin is a similar population. Nashville. These places are places with vibrant venue culture. Have been recognized internationally for this. Even like in Australia, like Perth. Perth is a similar population to Auckland. Much better transport system, much more venues. And yeah, Australians say Perth is hard, but I don't think those people know how hard it is to do a show in Auckland. So.
Yeah, I lived in Brisbane for a while, and I lived on the Gold Coast going to shows in Brisbane, and that was so easy.
Yeah.
Like the train ran all night, like once an hour maybe, and you just pop on $10 there and back. Like it's super simple. You can't even do that from Auckland to Hamilton. It's about the same distance.
You can't even do that from within Auckland to the big stadiums a lot of the time. Like Eden Park just gets crunched, and that's with extra train carriages and like event buses. People will be waiting for an hour or something, and after a big gig with lots of people milling around, and we mentioned like there's maybe less alcohol being drunk, so people feel a bit safer, but then we've got this perception of rise in crime. People are also feeling unsafe. They don't want to be out standing on the side of the road at 11-12 p.m.
Yep.
Well, look, put it this way. I feel very comfortable going anywhere and doing anything. And I still sometimes have to fight meth heads on public transport in central Auckland. For me personally, it's not really concerning, but I am aware that someone smaller or a woman or someone non-binary or the like could be completely terrified. So
it is quite a
some of
unique
this is
privilege to be fucked up in public and not be worried about something happening, right? Like that is
super.
quite.
It's a super privilege.
It's quite nice, yeah. I guess the broader idea, because Martyn and I caught up before we came on the podcast, is everything's connected. If we can improve general life stuff, the arts and culture will just get better because people will want, have free time and want to go do stuff. So it's like we really need to just fix Auckland to make it a city of music. That we're fine. Well, the music will get done either way, kind of thing.
Yeah, or we just go full Mad Max, and that could be pretty cool too. But it would also be fucking horrifying.
I just die. I need too much medication to like keep me going. If we go Mad Max, I'm out. Like
yeah, well, this is the thing. This is the thing. There's some big problems. There's some big problems with it. But the whole people squatting in abandoned warehouses, stealing power, it kind of gets results too. Personally, I prefer the version where we look after everyone. I think that we get far better results in the long run with that.
It's obviously the wider societal stuff, right? Like there's this increasing inequality. So, a lot of people who want to do music or do creative arts just don't have the opportunity, right? They're working two jobs. They're working two jobs and starting in the workforce before they're 16 to support their families. Rent is like 40% plus of their paycheck. Food's expensive. They probably need to maintain a car to get out to their job a lot of the time. It just doesn't leave people much energy or money.
Let me paint a picture. 25 years ago, you're a young person with creative aspirations in New Zealand. There's a thing called PACE. It's an artist's benefit. I never went on it, but you can go on it. You can go on it. You can rent was low. First flat I ever had, we were paying $50 each a room. I think like the next couple of flats were like $70 or $100. So you had these people. They had the arts benefit. They might have been working part-time or working under the table. They were and they had the time and the space to do their music, do their art, do their writing, do their whatever, and build it up. I mean, this is the context that created people like Flood of the Conchords, Fat Freddy's Drop,
Phoenix Foundation,
Taika Waititi, Phoenix Foundation, Lady Six, the Black Seeds,
all that layer of
like
artists that still do stuff now came up under PACE. It's crazy at that time.
Yeah, in that era, you have all these all the support and the New Zealand On Air album funding grants, $50,000. Yeah, but so you had all that context, and now the young artist emerging now, they're possibly studying something at a university level. They're probably working two jobs, maybe. they're paying a huge amount of rent, and they're trying to fit their arts practice in around all of that, plus they have a social life. No wonder they don't want to spend alcohol at the bar on Friday or Saturday night. They need to be able to get up the next morning and work on their paintings, work on their songs, work on their writing.
Go to work.
They're stretched.
Go to
They're
work.
stretched. They're stretched. Their mental health is, a lot of the times it's struggling. The difficulty settings right now are insane. But once again, I think the difficulty settings are very difficult for pretty much anyone who isn't already fabulously wealthy. I'm sure a lot of these conditions replicate across society. Even if you just talk to people driving Ubers or working in restaurants, you're going to hear a lot of stories about having 2 or 3 jobs, about doing incredibly long shifts, about struggling to make ends meet. It's
That's
not,
your audience as well, right? Like it's twofold. It's the people who are making art, and it's the people who are consuming art.
If you only are seeing art created by people with wealth, attended by people with wealth, what kind of diverse scene are you getting? You know, like you'd probably see it a bit, Kyle, on the political side. How many people have the time and bandwidth to engage politically in an activism standpoint or supporting a local MP? Like levels of privilege are very similar to be an artist in 2024. And I don't mean privilege in a bad way. I just mean you have free time, you have money to, it's like, and that's, you often see people who are of a similar socioeconomic background at shows and at political, events. That's interesting.
Look, this is how out the gate I am on this. I am at the point where I almost think being able to think about things from a traditional logic-based perspective is a sign of privilege at this point.
Yeah, it's hierarchy of needs.
People are strung out. People are strung out, and things are stressful. Things are extremely difficult, and it creates a lot of tension. And we see this tension manifest in the real world. We see it in the digital spaces. We see it interpersonally. It's tough. It's very tough.
Yeah, it's one of the ongoing arguments on the left, I guess, is like we're trying to make a platform for the working class. Like, where is the working class? They're working 80-hour weeks. And punishing jobs and dying young. That's
no, they really are dying young.
They're not in your movement. And the first step is to create a space where that's actually plausible, where you are going out of your way to do that.
Look, I'm going to get even more real. Like a lot of these organizations are probably doing their marketing and promotion via social media, and they're targeting their advertisement targeting. How they do their targeting is probably completely missing the people they're trying to connect with. Look, I see this all the time across the arts. I see it with things like New Zealand literature scene, books. I go to the literature festivals. I talk to the locals. I'll be somewhere for a festival and I'll be talking to people at the cafe, and they've got no idea that there's a book festival on that weekend. They've got no idea that there's even really any New Zealand authors. Like, they're just completely disconnected from the conversation. And look, the easy thing to do would be to blame the public. But and I think for those of us organizing things, we always need to look at what more we could be doing. How could we be doing things differently?
Yeah, that's kind of a point I've always, or tangentially related to a point I've always thought about New Zealand music, especially moving over from Australia. It's very frustrating that it seems from the outside that no one will ever give a shit about you unless you make it somewhere else first and then you come back. So that feels very disincentivizing for people who might have the bandwidth to start something, to be like, who's going to care about this because I haven't cracked it in Australia or cracked it in the US or anything like that.
Well, it's funny you say that, Mitch, because one of our biggest music, Martyn was going to say the same thing, one of our biggest music funding bodies commissioned a report onto their funding practices. And one of the recommendations from that report was that if artists are serious about making a career in New Zealand, they should first pursue a career overseas, which is an insane statement for a government organization to write that contributes hundreds of thousands of up to millions of dollars to the local ecosystem, abdicating responsibility in a country where all our major success stories, apart from a few outliers, started here, like Fat Freddy's Drop, 660, LAB, all these massive
Trinity Roots,
Trinity
Black
Roots.
Seeds.
Yeah. But I mean, even the Beths who did kind of get their big break overseas. All these people are starting here. They all need infrastructure, and it's just, yeah, it's insane to read that, to be honest. It's one of the worst things I've seen in my life, I reckon.
We've heard similar
Yeah.
things. We've had people on the podcast to talk about Creative New Zealand funding for writing and poetry and the like, and they have to either give evidence of what they've already published, or like give a full like breakdown of like what they're going to do. And like, how? No, I need funding to do this, right? Like,
Or how do I get to the point to be able to give you the deliverables?
Yeah.
There's no framework. Some people will argue we need to be thinking like the sports industry where they identify talent young, and then there's like frameworks for them to work up to like national, international level. We don't have anything like
It's
that. We just have people
it,
throwing frisbees that in a like a vacuum.
it's interesting though, because music culture, although there's a lot of common factors, it's still far from monolithic. And in some types of music, being identified as a child prodigy will serve you well in the long run. Other types of music, yeah, it's not going to work. You're going to have really found your credentials within a counterculture in a very authentic way that shows you're really invested in it. So it's a difficult field to build strategies for. But I think as Shane Shapiro's book illustrates, the fact that we don't really build these strategies into things like city planning ultimately ends up really weighing against us in the long run.
Yeah, and I think as well, you mentioned kind of how we do sport funding, Anthony, but even that is picking winners. And like for a lot of the stuff, like why is the bottom line the be all and end all? Why is that like why? No, some stuff is going to fail, and actually that's good. We want our creative industry to be failing with some of the things they're producing so they can do new and interesting things, so they can find things that work and don't work.
Yeah.
If everything needs to succeed, like you just end up with this low standardized, homogenized baseline, songs by committee kind of stuff, everything like over engineered, because that's what's going to get you a return on the dollar with the highest number of audience members, because that's how the system's set up. I don't know if I want that either, to be honest.
No. I mean, I don't care about commercial success in music and the arts on any level. All I'm looking for from a creative and artistic experience is the story you can tell, or the feeling or thing you can share that only you can give us and no one else can. That's literally all I'm looking for. The perspective, the feeling, the worldview, the sound, the idea, the thing that you can distinctly do.
And what is that, Kyle?
What is that? It could be fucking anything, mate. But I mean, this is the thing, right? Like, if you have people who are able to, not have to fight to survive every day of their lives, they're still going to have struggles, because that's a human experience. And though they're going to find a way to communicate those. And some will do it through music. But, you mentioned as well, Anthony, earlier, if it's just rich people, a lot of the time you're just going to get rich experiences.
Well, and to
Yep.
counter Martyn's take about not caring about commercial success, I am in a position where I need to think about that. And there's definitely, we've had all these conversations about artists and cost of living for audiences. Definitely at the industry level, if people weren't just trying to survive, I think people would take more chances on stuff. It's just it's all part of the same fucked thing that has all this momentum now, where it's like you'll see if you look up some of the summer festival lineups, you'll see really, quite safe conservative bookings, but like everyone's doing it. So I think probably by this time next year, people are going to be like, oh, why didn't we sell any tickets? And it's like, well, it's just all, Shapeshifter and Fat Freddy's and stuff. And it's like,
Although, Anthony says that he's countering my opinion, but, some of the main acts that Anthony works with, who are becoming quite commercially successful at the upper end of the musical middle classes, have achieved this level of success through having distinctive singular points of view and sounds, true expressions of what's going on inside them. So, if you can make the thing that only you can make, you can get some commercial results as well.
you just got to put in like 5 years. minimum, like minimum,
Maybe 10,
Minimum,
10,
yeah.
10 years,
minimum.
15,
Yeah.
20.
But that comes down to that risk-taking stuff as well, right? Like, and maybe you can talk to this about a bit in terms of like the actual procedure and process, but say, you have a cost for the venue booking, you've got the cost of the marketing, you've got all the admin work, all the stuff that isn't even a hard like lump sum, it's stuff that just needs to get done. And you're just ticking up alongside that, like, okay, how many tickets are we going to sell? Is this going to break even? If there's a question mark around that, I imagine it makes it a lot harder to make those decisions. Like, and not as a value judgment, just as a will our business continue being able to do what we do judgment.
To be clear, are you talking for the artist business or my personal business? Mitch's business?
No,
I'm just
no.
kidding.
Oh,
I'm just
well, I
I'm
guess
just
we're on
kidding.
different angles. No,
I'm
no,
just
no.
kidding.
As an event person.
I guess, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of risk in everything, right? I guess the way I like to run it is I try and take the risks at the smaller level where the costs are considerably lower and try to be more risk averse when you're getting to the 1,000, 2,000 cat venues. Because, if that tour is losing money, that could be 50, 100 grand. But, worst case, if it's a small indie band, worst case, like 5 or 10, like worst case.
Yeah.
So I guess that's probably, I mean, I've been called a lot of things. People call me risk averse, but I just think a lot of those people don't take risks like I do. So I do ignore that. But yeah, definitely like it's a balance. And there's a lot of times a tour will start and you don't know if it's going to break even. And you just can't do that 10 times a year. I try and do it less than 5. But at the same time, those tours are less labor compared to the bigger ones. So yeah, I feel like it's a justifiable. If something happens for the artist down the line, like it works out for me, it's all good. But yeah, it's like gambling, kind of. You're gambling on talent. You just, no one's got the formula. But maybe to align with Martyn's previous point, I do try and pick stuff that has artistic merit outside of the commercial value, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Anthony does a really good job of helping develop the touring side of things for new talent in a way that's safe for him and safe for the artist, while scaling the more established acts up into bigger venues at the same time. And ultimately, on a long enough timeline, some of those smaller acts are going to become some of those larger acts in the future. So, yeah, if you can have one eye focused on what's ahead and one eye focused on what's in front of you right now, or maybe an ear perhaps, or something like that, I think it pays off in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, one of the first bands that we did was this band called North Lane out of Sydney.
Oh wow.
And when we toured them the first time, like 80 people came. It was Zeal main room sucked because it was like main room Zeal's like 400 capacity, I think. But we just kept bringing them over because they just had a good time here. They just liked coming here because it's a nice country. And then by the last time I was working with them, we had to move venues because so many people came. So the risk can pay off in the long run. We found that a lot of bands just liked coming here. So they would be like, yeah, just like go back to the US or the UK or wherever and just tell all their friends that they liked coming here. And then sometimes those bands would do a lot better just because for them it was like a holiday, which is weird because we were a company paying for the other bands' holidays. But
yeah, you're also you're talking about a type of band or performing artist who's relationship focused. Mm-hmm. This is one thing. I mean, you notice there's different psychological profiles in music. Something I think about a lot is regardless of whether people have underground or commercial aspirations, a lot of the time they tend to start in the same space. Generally, the thing that's accessible when you're starting out, if you don't have all the privilege or the family members, record label reps or the like, usually there's these sort of underground or counterculture venues or nights that allow new people starting out to do stuff.
That's literally how I
and
got
you'll
my
have
start,
all
by the
these
way.
people mixed up in them.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. But as time goes on, what you realize is that not everybody in these spaces has the same intentions. some people are doing this because they want to be part of the scene or the community or this wave, or they have these shared ideas. And there's other people who are just doing it until they're able to attach themselves to something larger or escalate themselves up into the commercial world. And sometimes you see visual representation of this occurring when an artist or band gets to a certain level and then suddenly they unfollow everybody that they used to follow on Instagram.
You do see it quite a lot. You see
Yeah.
it quite a lot.
There's been a few times that's happened to me. People have profiled or interviewed, they used to follow me, then I wake up one day and they've unfollowed everyone, and I think, they might have signed to a major label. Something decent on the commercial end has just happened, and now they're trying to present themselves as being a star. And then quite often when that happens, you also find that they'll start to paper over their history. Suddenly all the references to that counterculture or underground stuff vanishes and a whole new narrative emerges. But, within the community side of it, you meet so many people who really value friendship and connection and having these networks all around the world and being able to return to places. And for them, it's so much about seeing their friends as it is about playing the shows, or maybe they have favorite restaurants or cafes they like to go to, or record stores. And just so much kindness. Like you think about it, the small promoters, the things they do for these acts who come here, like, hey, let's drive you out to Piha for the day, or let's go to Bethel's, let's climb up to a waterfall. Let's go for a road trip. Let's do the Tongariro crossing, And then
Hobbiton.
amazingly, like a lot of these bands actually return this kindness to these people when they make it for trips overseas. Some of the stuff people have gone out of their way to do for me in the UK or the US, you just think, wow, damn.
Every time I go to
it.
Sydney, North Lane look after me, which is good.
Yeah,
It's an
you're part of
exchange.
their story now.
Yeah, it's an exchange. It's not purely this like commercial endeavor. It's like Martyn, you used to talk about that idea that the industry is always looking for these independent bedroom artists or whatever that are completely siloed in their bedroom and make these great songs that sell 50,000 records. But a lot of music is interdependent, right? Where it's like a lot of communities working together, rehearsal rooms, gear share, friends going on each other's bills. That's the actual reality of how music is made. But the industry likes to present it as a very like, this is an outlier. We made this happen.
Yeah,
We're the music
stuff.
industry. Yeah.
Well,
Totally.
look, they've always liked the idea that the rock star is like a god descending from the heavens, fully formed. And the bedroom auteur is sort of a new version of it. This genius who made this incredible thing in isolation, who has no influences, just pure talent,
Mhm.
Yeah, marketing, guys. They like it.
Yeah.
And I mean, these kind of things as well, we're talking about community and the way like there's this back and forth between artists and the people booking them and people taking them on tour. All of that happens much more smoothly when there's less inequality, right? Like when there aren't ways to be taken advantage of. We've had some like really good discussions on here previously when we we're doing the pop culture live stream around, even back in the late 90s, early 2000s, when there was more of a scene. You still get people who are gatekeeping and just like real fuckers who try to control parts of the community, or who had access to like a venue or to a range of commercial products or whatever, and that disparity would cause cleavages and breaks in the community. But if everyone has access to stuff, if there's an accessibility to being able to get hold of gear or being able to get venue space or work with people who are in the industry, there's less potential for that kind of poor experience.
But Kyle, at
Yeah.
least in those days, there were gatekeepers, but there were shitloads of them.
Oh no, that's what I mean.
Now-
Even
No,
then,
but-
those things existed.
But
But it
now
wasn't as
there
bad.
are gatekeepers that are in other countries, and there's like you don't even know how to like programmers at Spotify or some
Yeah.
guy at Live Nation or something. It's their
Okay,
distance
I'll give an
between.
example.
Martyn's got an example.
Okay, so Onra, the French beat maker, like a substantial percentage of his streaming income comes from a couple of B-side or interlude tracks that were almost afterthoughts on albums that he made that ended up placed on high engagement playlists on Spotify. Now, the high level of streaming of these songs has been massively beneficial to him financially, but in terms of being able to find out how those songs ended up on those playlists, why they ended up on those playlists, whether there's anything he could do to get more songs on those playlists, forget about it. That information's not available. That information will never be available. All you can do is throw it out there and hope that you get lucky like that. And in the past, you probably could have at least had a conversation, and the gatekeeper might have told you to fuck off, but at least you got told to fuck off.
And there wasn't just one person at an app. It was like multiple radio programmers, if newspaper journalists, television, like there were so many. If you couldn't get 6 opportunities, there are probably 6 other ones you can get. Now people just put stuff online, and if it doesn't blow up, they get frustrated. And it's kind of insane. But at the same time, what else do you do? It's kind of, you can see why people go a little Twitter threads. Like it drives you crazy. I can't imagine how hard it is to build a creative career in 2024. It's very, very difficult.
The whole thing is set up in a way where if you complain about the challenges you're facing, you will sound insane. The average person will just go, "You sound like a crazy person. What the fuck's wrong with you? Go and get a job." You know?
How could that be true? That can't be true. It's true.
It's talking about niche politics on the podcast like every fucking week, man. And then seeing it like become mainstream in 12 months, and you're like, yeah, we fucking told you. And everyone's like, no, you're insane. And I still think that.
You're a communist.
Yeah, you're a communist, buddy. It's very, very challenging.
And I wish I had the kind of funding that they believe I did.
Well, look. We all wish we had the financial resources people believe we do. There's this humans have a propensity to imagine that everyone else is earning more money than they are.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's just an assumption. They're like, well, if you're pursuing X, Y, or Z, you must be earning A, B, or C, because if you weren't, why would you pursue this thing?
Yeah. Personal drive doesn't exist.
The reasons we pursue these things are very complicated.
I think we're probably coming up to time, but one thing I would just be interested in hearing, or a couple of things I'd be interested in hearing from everyone, is maybe one thing that you're really liking in the scene right now to end us on positive note, and what's a single policy that someone here in New Zealand, a political party, could pick up that would make you go, that's our boys, that's the party we want, and they're doing the right thing for us. Maybe I'll start with my co-host. If Mitch, you got anything ready to go?
Well, positives. Emo's back. That is a huge positive. I'm very grateful that we got asked to play a show recently with this band, and we're like, oh yeah, sick, we'll do 605. Look them up. They're like 16, so we can't play with them at 605. But it's just cool that there's these emo bands coming up. In terms of policy, fix fucking New Zealand on air. That shit sucks. There's too many problems with it to go over right now.
Do you make heavy music?
We make shoegaze.
Yeah.
So
good luck.
Yeah.
Sorry. Sometimes I think that, once again, this is why I say I look at a lot of these things on a post-logic level, because quite often I think, people will look at an organization and go, why isn't it doing this thing it was never designed to do? This is terrible. It should do this thing that I want it to do. And the fact that people do that, I'm not even mad at them. I think that just shows how stressed out and frustrated people are, that they're trying to imagine organizations having mandates they never had.
And if they made more marginal income from all the things we just talked about, and cost of living wasn't as bad, they would be less kind of desperate to get some funding because they could pay for stuff,
Yeah, you sometimes get the feeling that people's brains are rotting from being malnourished.
It's real. That's true.
Or stress.
Permanent stress, yeah.
Martyn, constant trauma stress disorder. Okay, so I'm excited about heaps of stuff, man. One thing I'm excited about is Holiday Records in Auckland has set up this combination pre-order crowdfunding platform where bands can set their album up to get pressed on vinyl, but they need to sell a certain number of pre-orders before the pressing process occurs. I think the number can be between 100 to 150 pre-orders, and you'll end up making 200 to 300 records. A group I did some work with earlier in the year, Moko Mokai, they achieved their pre-order targets in 4 hours.
Wow.
And actually, they achieved more than their pre-order targets. They completely sold out their run. That was really exciting to see that. And a great thing of that was this is a group that's pressing an album to vinyl that they released digitally a year ago. So they've been playing shows, they've let people get familiar with the music, learn to love the music. Now people want to buy the record. There's other groups I'm friends with who are embarking on similar processes. It's taking them a bit longer to sell their pre-orders. It'll probably take them a month to sell their pre-orders, but they're going to sell their pre-orders. They're about to make their vinyl. They'll have 100 or 150 copies going out to fans. Then they'll have another 150 copies to sell as merch at shows or sell on the Bandcamp or whatever. I think that's a pretty positive development for a lot of in-between level artists, and an exciting way for them to begin building a physical music platform. I'm also really excited about new generations of artists emerging around the country. There's a Maori indie rock artist from South Auckland called Great South, formerly known as Fable. To me, his music sounds like OMC doing Darcy Clay covers. I'm super psyched on him. I'm super psyched on a rapper from Auckland called Renzo, who's doing this really, really amazing bilingual rap music. I'm really stoked on this jazz composer and saxophone player from Wellington, Louisa Williamson, who has been running a monthly night at the Rogan Vagabond called Heavy Flow, where she gets a whole bunch of her friends to jam with her. And they're capturing a real similar improvised vibe to the one I remember in Wellington in the early 2000s, but they've moved the style along. Jazz meets electronica meets hip-hop, elements of soul and neo-soul, people like Ma, Asia coming up as guests, Iris Little, LJ. So that's fun, seeing that scene incubate, seeing them all make records. That's the other thing too, all the people in that scene are making and putting out albums this year, so it feels like they're having a moment. There's a dance music club in Christchurch called Flux that I love, that's an open-air nightclub in the courtyard. And they've got one of the most unpretentious dance music audiences in the country. I was lucky enough to DJ there in January with a really great DJ from Detroit, Marcellus Pittman. We had this awesome night there, super fun crowd. Every time I go down, I see really fun crowds at their events. Crews in Auckland like Manuka Recordings, doing a lot of really interesting soul music. And it's also great, seeing more established acts like Avantdale Bowling Club going through Europe and the UK, the best being able to step up the sort of venues that they're playing in. Organizations out in South Auckland like Whiki Fortress, which Coco Solid runs, being able to facilitate more Polynesian arts activities out there in the contemporary space. I could keep going.
What's the policy?
In terms of policy, Anthony's across more of the stuff than I am, so I'm probably going to support Anthony's policy ideas in this conversation.
What am I excited about? I think, despite today's fairly jaded vibe, I think in 2024, if you can break through that mold and become an artist of note, or whatever you want to call it, you actually can own a lot of the rights to your music and actually make quite a lot of money out of it. Like, a lot of artists now are kind of the CEOs and music directors of their own companies, because all the people under them, a lot of people aren't releasing through traditional labels anymore. They're their own label. They've got manager, they got booking agent, they got publicist, tour manager, whatever you want. But, they're able to sustain a career through tickets, physical merch, and a little bit of streaming money, like an actual sustainable career, which is actually really cool. And it's not billions of streams. It's, 2,000, 3,000 records, or 200 t-shirts or whatever it is, whatever level it's at, if you can sustain it, and you know, part of that would be that holiday program where you don't have to put cash down up front. That's fucking amazing. Like, the biggest block to physical music is money. Like, what would 300 albums be, Martyn, like 4K, 5 grand, something like
Yeah,
that.
possibly more. It's a substantial investment to do that kind of thing.
And that cash up front
So
is
for
like,
a holiday to allow people to do it this way,
yeah, it's awesome. And they print the vinyl,
it's a
so
lot.
it's, you know, it's what they're doing. It's not like they're paying a third party to do it. And yeah, I think if you can, obviously, the hard thing at the moment is just getting to that position where you can break through. No one knows how to do it, but yeah, once that happens, you've got a lot of options, and I think that's cool. It's not how it used to be. There's a great article by the recently deceased Steve Albini about the music label Machine from 1993. I reckon you should look it up. It is very amazing reading and still relevant today, although not as relevant because of the reasons mentioned. As far as policy goes, I think honestly, if we could treat music venues in the way we treat church and religious organizations, having tax-free, because the problem is if you give venues like special status and rental relief, that fucks them because it just means the landlords just charge them more rent. They will charge them the difference. And this has happened in other music markets. But if you give them tax relief, that's part of the transaction that the landlord has nothing to do with. So even if the rent is, you know, 80 grand, 90 grand, if they're not having to pay tax, that is still tens of thousands of dollars potentially that they just don't have to find every month. And, you know, if you're only trying to pay the bills through selling piss, it's just a train to Shitsville, honestly. Like, I admire anyone that runs a music venue, even if they're the biggest C word in the world. Like, it's the most amazing thing you can do for a community, in my opinion.
oh, you got to be crazy. Oh, also, I just
You
want to
are
also,
crazy. You are crazy.
yeah. Yeah. Also, I just want to mention Christoph El Truento made a couple of incredible dub albums over the last couple of years. Producer and DJ from Auckland, Dubs from the Neighborhood, and Peacemaker Dub, and the Maori electro artist Mokotron doing some really cool stuff. Man, this is the interesting thing. You know, you get so cynical and jaded and frustrated, but there's
This is
pretty
why
much
we end on
always something
this.
to be excited about. You know.
Yeah, this is why you had to try and wrap it up. We don't get to do this with politics. But
And
No.
that's why it's so exciting. If all that great art is being made how it is now, imagine how great it could be.
I guess
Thank you,
Exciting
Go.
thought.
wrapping up completely now. Do you just want to do your pitches? Like where can people find you and stuff? If we'll go the other way around. So let's start with you, Anthony.
I'm pretty online, to be honest. I run a business called 100% Good. We do constant promotion and booking agent services. Work with a lot of indie rock people and some rappers, but yeah, I mean, we always got stuff on sale, and yeah, like we've discussed, always trying to see what's going on. So yeah, if you've got new music, hit me up. I'll always reply. Not much to plug though. Everything I've got on sale is either finished or sold out, which I guess it's good for me. But yeah, just keep going to gigs, honestly. That even if they're not my gigs, I don't give a shit. Just keep going to shows. That would be great.
Martyn, where can
Okay.
people find you?
Yeah, Instagram, Twitter, at Martyn Pepperell. I've also got a Substack newsletter called Selected Works. But you
Very
know,
good. It's very good.
do we really need to find each other? You know, let's find each other in the real world. You know,
Wait,
say
no,
hi at a gig or something.
Kyle, you said this was going to blow us up, so I mean, they'll find us, right?
Look, when I said blow it up, I didn't mean you're going to do well out of it.
Oh shit. Okay. Strike everything I
Yeah.
said. Edit everything I
Yeah.
said out. I'm
Yeah,
out.
sorry.
Yeah,
Dual meanings really doing the damage there.
yeah. I mean, look, you know, social media, and yeah, let's talk. Let's talk in real life. Let's talk at a gig. Let's talk at a cafe. Let's talk about it.
Sick. Mitch, where can people find you?
Well, based off this conversation, don't go to my Twitter because it is all just games. media. But listen to my band, Jiahu Symbols, JIAHU Symbols, and come see us at a gig. I don't know. Yeah, and on Instagram, Kramer Mitch. That's me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me, everyone. That's been a lot of fun.
Thanks for the invite, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Great. Awesome. All right. I got to go
That's-
and cook some dinner for some people now.
Look, that's just how that's life. That's life. Thank you,
See,
everyone.
even Martyn's doing that instead of going to a show. What the
No.
fuck?
And thank you to everyone who's listened in as well. Really appreciate everyone in the audience for continuing to listen to us. Go and hit these guys up. Go to some gigs. And we'll catch you on the weekend for current events. See you then.
If artifice is art, then I'm living a pointless life, but I'm learning all your lessons. Fucking politics, there's no distinction. The road's apart now. It's paved with good intentions, and I'll admit that I'm at a loss for what to say when they quote this as a cost we ought to stay. I live amongst the people every day in this vindictive, forgetful fucking race.